Hey, what's going on, everybody out there? I'm Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel and welcome to this brand new JJ's One Man Podcast. Hope you've been having a good time throughout the week. Hopefully, the week has been smooth for all of you. This episode of the podcast is a little bit later than usual because not only was there other content going up on the channel, but yours truly's feeling a little bit under the weather. It was bound to happen at some point, but I'm good. I'm here. I'm strapped in. I'm ready to talk about a whole bunch of topics that we got to discuss today. But first, a little bit of housekeeping for everybody so you guys could be in the know. Make sure, if you haven't already, make sure you follow me on X or Twitter. The X is such a stupid name, to be honest with you. I'm just calling it Twitter, okay? Follow me on Twitter. Make sure you follow me on there because I'm posting every single day brand new stuff related to gaming or anything else that I want to talk about. Same thing with TikTok, same thing with Instagram, same thing obviously with YouTube here on the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, you need to do so. You need to correct that, son, because that's a very important thing you need to get done. But anyway, I'm recording this episode of the podcast, I want to say a couple hours prior to the Xbox Developer Direct, which is going to be happening like later on today as of the recording of this podcast. So any of that news that happens once this episode goes up is not going to be discussed here. I'll probably follow it up on the next episode because there's a couple big things that are probably going to be talked about there because we have the Indiana Jones game, we have Hellblade 2, and a whole bunch of other stuff that hopefully, fingers crossed, we get surprised at during the Developer Direct. That'll be pretty dope. So let's just get started on some of the stuff I actually want to talk about because, even before then, okay, before I even forget, because I actually am proud of this, okay? Check it out. If you haven't already, I announced it on Twitter when this actually happened. I was on the IGN official Live Spaces discussion about Echo, Marvel's Echo, that's on Disney Plus right now. If you haven't already checked this out, definitely go to the official IGN page on Twitter to go check out the audio. We had it live, so everybody was in there in the live chat talking about Echo, which is really cool. We got to talk about the show. We got to talk about everything with the MCU, everything as far as, where the MCU is going next. It was a really good discussion overall. I've been really enjoying those Live Spaces discussions with IGN, which is pretty cool. So for me, it's a real treat to do so. We have a bunch of great people on the panel. We had a great discussion about Echo, and yeah, it was pretty dope. So now that we got all the housekeeping out the way, okay, now let's get to the official, actual stuff I want to talk about, because there's a lot of things to really get into that I feel like are pretty interesting, because it's been a weird week, give or take a few days, where a bunch of stuff just kept happening. And between the YouTuber drama, between all the gaming news and other things that have been going around, thank God we got an Xbox Direct to give us at least a little bit of good news. You know what I'm saying? Because all this bad news or all this drama nonsense is ridiculous. So let's dive into this. So let's talk a little bit about this stuff with Square Enix using AI generated art for Foamstars. So if you don't know what Foamstars is, this is an article over on Kotaku. Foamstars is that Splatoon clone, or a game that's very similar to Splatoon, where you have to cover a whole area in your own specific color, in this case being foam, and in Splatoon it was paint with the little squid kids and such. But it's a lot of people are comparing that game over to Splatoon. But the thing is, with this article here, Square Enix is actually starting to get into using AI-generated art. So AI art, if you don't know anything about AI, because that's been a ridiculously hot topic of debate as of the last couple of years. That was one of the big things that was involved with the SAG-AFTRA strike. AI art is pretty much, again, using AI instead of an actual artist or a human being in order to generate a piece of art or a piece of media and such. And a lot of people are very opposed to it for a variety of reasons. It's very complicated. Not going to get into it now. The reason why I'm talking about this right now at this moment in time is because I feel like while it's nothing wrong with a company using a tool like an AI generated piece of art, or using AI, I should say, in order to generate art, it's a little bit of a bad perception in my personal opinion, because since that's such a volatile discussion right now, I don't think that Square Enix as a company wants any of that bad press being thrown on Foamstars, because Foamstars, it's an original IP, it's an original idea, technically not an original idea, but it's an original IP from Square Enix that is inspired, let's say, from Splatoon. Excuse me. Inspired from Splatoon. And, you're not going to see a lot of people really be too eager to dive into this, especially if this is tied to some sort of controversy. Now, again, speaking with Video Game Chronicle at a press event, Foamstars producer Kosuke Okatani said that while most of the game's artwork and assets were made by hand by the artist at developer Toy Logic, some of the art was created by using AI. All of the core elements in Foamstars, the core gameplay, and the things that make the game enjoyable, those are made by hand. However, we did want to experiment with AI as well. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Again, you could experiment all you want. This is not going to be a tool that goes away just because a few people don't like it. And I say a few people very loosely as far as that terminology is concerned. The problem is, though, is that, again, you're going to get into like messing around with this type of thing, and it's just going to bring this bad press or this bad discussion that has nothing to do with the game itself. And it's just from a marketing standpoint, from the standpoint of like someone like, okay, if I have a game that I'm trying to sell to people, I want as little bad press as possible. So that way when people see my game or they talk about my game, it's all about how great it is. And I feel like once you start getting into using AI like this or start being a little bit more open, at least for now, it's going to generate a whole bunch of problems for that game. Because you know how people are on the internet. They could take things to like the massively like far extreme. It's saying like, oh, this game uses like AI and like all its assets. Like, it's pretty ridiculous how people could get sometimes with this. I just say to myself, you know, why even invite that? Why even invite any of those problems? Because there's just no reason to do so. It just feels like it's unnecessary. It's unneeded. But again, he's coming at it from a creative standpoint. He's making this game. He wants to be able to experiment with stuff because I'm pretty sure in future games or future releases, they're going to want to use that tool again in some way or form. And it doesn't matter how many people are upset about it. It doesn't matter as far as what everybody's opinion is about that. So, I mean, eventually at some point, AI is coming. AI is going to happen. AI is going to be a thing. And we're just going to have to deal with it, whether we like it or not. But either way, let me know your thoughts about this down below in the comments section. Are you going to check out Foamstars, by the way? Because I see it. I don't know if I'm going to check it out day one. I mean, it seems interesting. And again, Splatoon is pretty cool in of itself. But there's other games that are coming out. Like at the end of this month, I already got it on reserve. Tekken 8 is happening. Once Tekken 8 comes out, it's over. And then next month, after that, is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And then everything gets shut down as far as I'm concerned. But regardless, though, let's move on to the next subject, okay? Let's talk about Billy Mitchell, okay? Now, funny enough, I live in the same state as Billy Mitchell. I've never been to his restaurant, like his actual barbecue restaurant. You know, I never tried out his hot sauce. I've met Billy Mitchell before at events, you know, at various times, like a couple years back. And we had a small conversation, very cordial. Didn't really get into it. I would have loved to at least maybe had a much more longer convo with him, but never really got deep into it with him to find out what he's all about. But Homeboy here has been having a lot of issues, okay, because he's been accused of cheating, you know, making his scores illegitimate because he used MAME in order to make his Donkey Kong score specifically that he made go into the kill screen. Obviously, if you know Billy Mitchell, you know about the King of Kong, the documentary, the idea that he's a big classic video game player that has all these world records. But a lot of that, specifically for Donkey Kong, is brought into question because one of the big rules for the company Twin Galaxies is that you can't use MAME. You have to use original hardware in order to make your actual scores. And there's been a court case going back and forth with Twin Galaxies and all this stuff. And recently, as per this article with IGN, which got updated, by the way, I should mention, his scores were reinstated in the archives of Twin Galaxies. They weren't reinstated in the leaderboards because of all the stuff going on right now. Basically, he's been disgraced as far as his actual his actual scores are, his world record scores. And that's not a place you want to be, especially with the retro gaming community. Like, there's a lot of shame, I think, that comes along with this. And there's a lot of other stuff in here. You could come read it about, like, some of the testimonies, the experts that they got. It's just, it sounds like a mess, but like a mess of his own doing. And like a bunch of useless drama and stupidity that seems like, you know, there could have been a better way to go about all this. But regardless, though, that's happening. Again, I pass no judgments. If he cheated, he cheated. If he used something that was against the rules, that has to be dealt with, that has to be addressed. And all this like circling around the drain stuff is just kind of ridiculous. It serves no purpose to get into that. So either way, let me know some of your thoughts about Billy Mitchell. What do you guys think about the entire issue with his, his world review scores? Do you think he's actually good at Donkey Kong? If he's actually good whatsoever? Because I've seen him play. Like in the King of Kong, you could see him playing. And he's gone to other events. I've never been to them myself, but I've seen other pieces of, like, you know, clips on YouTube and stuff where he knows how to play retro games. That's fine. But if you did something against the rules, you know, you gotta be accountable for that. You gotta be held accountable. So anyway, next story. Let's talk about Rockstar, because what the hell's the matter with Rockstar? Like, this, you want to talk about stupid, okay? This is a stupid lawsuit. So GTA and Alan Wake devs are beefing, Okay, so when I saw this headline from Kotaku, I'm like, oh, okay, we got some beef. I want to see some beef. What type of beef we got here? And it's so ridiculous and stupid that I was like, this beef, I feel like I got cheated out of this beef. Like, it's so dumb. So Rockstar and was it Alan Wake, the Alan Wake dev? Okay, what was it again? Alan Wake dev. Remedy Entertainment. Oh my god, I like said the wrong name there for a second. Remedy Entertainment and Rockstar beefing. And it's because of their logo. As you can see here, the R logo for Rockstar and Remedy. Rockstar's like suing them. They're, trying to over a trademark dispute because of the R in their logo, which is ridiculous. Like, you look at these, like, real talk. Hey, let me go over here for a second so you guys can see. Real talk. You look at these logos and you're like, they don't look similar whatsoever. Yes, they both got R's in them, but you can't trademark the letter R. Like, that's ridiculous. That's so dumb. Like, this is one of those things where I feel like maybe they're trying to get a payday. Maybe they're just trying to make some noise. Maybe they're just trying to see if they could get away with it. But this, to me, like, I feel like the judge in the court case, like when they're sitting there and they're in trial and he's looking at this, he's like, why did you even bring this to me? Like, I could look at this right now. Like, these two logos are not similar. Like, what are we even doing here? I mean, are we done or are we finished? Like, it's so ridiculous when you look at this. So again, I don't know the motivation behind Rockstar's approach to this. I mean, look at some of these statements here from Rockstar. Okay, so with this average consumer in mind, the question is, would this legally fictitious person be confused between the Rockstar R with the added star and the Remedy logo with the repeating R design? Okay, it's like anybody with common sense is going to know the difference between these two things. Maybe they might not know the Remedy logo. Obviously. I mean, it does say Remedy right underneath it. Like, I mean, come on. But the point is, though, is like, this is so stupid. This is like one of those stupid lawsuits. It's like, how did they even, like, entertain this? It's just so ridiculous. But tell me your thoughts about this down below in the comment section. Do you think that Rockstar has a case? Do you think, like, they could actually, like, have a whole conversation about this in court? Do you think they'll win? Which I doubt it. I really sincerely doubt it that they'll actually win. It's like, Rod, what are you doing, Rockstar? Like, Rockstar, stop doing stuff like this and go finish making GTA 6 for me. Okay, I gotta wait till 2025 for this damn game. Try to at least, take some of that energy in this lawsuit and put it towards GTA 6 development. That way, maybe I could get it end of 2024 instead of 2025. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that'll be so much better, a much more better use of your energy than something like this, because this is so silly. Anyway, let's move on. Probably the last big story, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. Let's talk about Ubisoft. So, what the hell is going on with Ubisoft? Now, this broke out within the last few days. And to be honest with you, some of the statements here got taken a little bit out of context. So, let's go through a little bit of them. So, an exec at Ubisoft says that gamers need to get comfortable not owning their games in order for game subscriptions to take off, which, on face value, if you didn't know any better, I can understand being like, what the hell are you talking about? You're wilding over here, okay? So basically, let's look at the full quote, okay? Where is it? I'm trying to look over here, okay? Here we go. Here's the full quote. This comes from, executive at Assassin's Creed. I think it's Philippe Tremblay, okay, or director of subscriptions at Ubisoft, okay? So he was talking to the GI Biz. So they're sourcing gamesindustry.biz. So he says, I don't have a crystal ball, but when you look at the different subscription services that are out there, we have a rapid expansion over the last couple of years, but it's still relatively small compared to the other models. Okay, we're seeing expansion on console as the likes of PlayStation and Xbox bring new people in. On PC, from a Ubisoft standpoint, it's already been great, but we are looking to reach more on PC, so we have opportunity there. One of the things that we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. As gamers grow comfortable in that aspect, you don't lose your progress. If you resume your game at another time, your progress file is still there. That's not been deleted. You don't lose what you've built in your game or your engagement with the game. So it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your games. I still have two boxes of DVDs. I definitely understand the gamer's perspective with that. But as people embrace the model, they will see that these games will exist. The service will continue and you'll be able to access them whenever you feel like. That's reassuring. Streaming is also a thing that works really well with the subscription, so you pay when you need it, as opposed to paying all the time. Honestly, No problem with a lot of those statements. I understand where he's coming from. Okay. So it's a little bit different than the headline, the actual lead of the actual piece, but it still makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you. Like, I get where he's coming from. Here's the main problem, though. Okay. Let me take a sip of this water because my throat's dry. Talking so much. So here's the main problem, though. DVDs, movies, television, that type of experience is a little bit different than with games. With all those different things, and specifically with movies, a lot of people were more comfortable paying money to go to a theater to watch a movie one time than much more frequent and for a much more longer period of time than they were actually buying DVDs, VHSs, Betamax, etc. Okay? With games, from the very get-go, or at least from the very beginning, we've always been accustomed to owning physical media, or at least engaging with physical media much more often than actually playing around with streaming services or digital versions of games. There's two very different mediums. This is why with movies, people are a little bit much more okay with adopting those streaming services, or at least digital versions of movies, where you don't necessarily own the movie, but you actually pay for a subscription to watch it, maybe however many times you want to watch it whenever you own a subscription service like Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, etc. Again, it's very similar to paying like $10 for a movie and you go see that movie one time. Like, once you leave the theater, that's it. People are just so accustomed to that for a very, very long period of time. And with games, it's just not like that. So I understand the argument, and I understand that in order for subscription services like Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Ubisoft Plus, I think it's Ubisoft Plus, or EA Play. I'm trying to remember what are the other ones that we have. Like, there's a bunch of different ones. Do they list any others in here? No, they don't list any others in here. But like, those are some of the main ones, which is PlayStation Plus, or Premium, Essential, Classic, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. The Ubisoft Plus, Ubisoft Plus, which is for all the Ubisoft games, and EA Play, and you could even throw Netflix in there because they're starting to get into games and such. I get it that in order for those subscription services to thrive, or at least be bigger than what they are now, people have to be able to jump on board with that. But it's going to be very, very difficult and damn near impossible for many people out there to convince them that jumping on these services is better than owning your physical games. Because real talk, like, I love owning physical games. I love owning boxes of games, whether it's my classic retro stuff, my PlayStation 5 stuff, my Xbox stuff, etc. Like, there's just something about owning a tangible object for a game that just feels good. It's just the way it is. And it's been happening for everybody nearly for so long, for most people's lives. I know for most of my life, I've owned physical games. Like, you're never going to get me to stop buying physical games. Like, if I have the opportunity to go get Tekken 8 on physical copy for PlayStation 5, I'm going to go do it, as opposed to buying digitally through the PlayStation Network, which there are pros and cons to both. Like, instead of having to go to GameStop, either at midnight or the next day, I could buy it digitally and then have it right at midnight on PSN and be able to play Tekken 8 right when it first comes out. There's obviously little pros and cons to that, but I think that just the ability to own your game, to have your game in hand, to say like, okay, this is my copy of Tekken 8, like, there's just a charm to that you're never going to get rid of, no matter how much developers want people to really dive into this idea of just being digital only, because again, some of these people out here, a lot of gamers out here have grown up with physical games. They were part of the 8-bit, 16-bit, 32 and 64-bit eras. Some of them even before that with PC gaming. Now, granted, let's be real for a second. If there was one group of people, I would say that is probably going to go digital only or streaming services a lot more quicker than anybody else, it'd be the PC guys. Because at least the PC people, I feel like, unlike console players, they're a little bit much more willing and open to the idea of trying new things and also messing around with things to see how it works for them. And if it doesn't, they could always go back to what they want. You could also say that like physical copies of games on PC were probably much more quicker to go away compared to console games, which is why like you have services like Steam, you have services like GOG, and they're not even services. They're not even subscriptions. They're more like storefronts, so they're digital only. So it's not really necessarily quote unquote the same thing, but I find that group of gamers or those groups of players and consumers much more willing or faster to get into this type of stuff than the console people. I think that's the best way you could really look at it. So, I mean, let's look at some of these comments, like some of the people in here. first person here. I think what we really need is a mandatory archival of game/content. If digital content is ever delisted or pulled, it should become part of the public domain, not in terms of licensing, but for consumption. The ever-advancing digital marketplace needs to have content protections guaranteed for consumers, not just protections for companies who want users to buy new media instead of playing old games and watching old TV shows. And that's another big part of this whole discussion. And sometimes, for better or worse, people tend to harp on this because there are examples of companies that are removing content or like changing up the, I guess you could say, the user agreements or changing up the circumstances for certain pieces of digital content, games, movies, TV shows. There was a whole big thing not too long ago with Discovery content, like Discovery, all these shows that were originally, I guess, from Discovery Plus were going to get nuked out of the PSN. So people that own these actual pieces that they paid for a while back, they were going to get removed from their library. And everybody was like, hold up a second. I paid however much, money for all this stuff. Why are you going to take it away from me? And I think that's the core of the entire debate and the core of the entire problem is that people don't like the idea of just taking stuff away from them when they paid for it. It doesn't matter what type of thing it is. Like when people pay for a show or pay for a movie that they could have digitally, like just the idea of just taking it away from them, I think is a problem. Now with subscriptions, it's different. You're paying for the subscription for the service. And there's an understanding going into that look, I don't own any of these movies, but I could always go to them and actually watch them, or these TV shows, I could always watch them at the drop of a hat whenever I want. And as long as I pay for that subscription. So a lot of this stuff kind of gets crossed and put together in like different ways. The main thing is that you're never going to, like I said, you're never going to want to get people to stop this idea of just owning their games, owning their media. Here's another one. Easy for a third-party company to say. Buying games digitally is already sketchy enough. If enough people are subscribed to your service, it doesn't matter how well your games sell. It will still probably end up happening, though. Give it 5 to 10 years. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Maybe it's, for some people they might agree with that, but I don't know if I'm necessarily on board with that fully. Because I feel like something like that is going to take a lot longer overall. I made the switch to digital for games over a decade ago. For movies, though, I still actively buy Blu-rays and don't see myself stopping anytime soon. And again, you have a lot of people like that. There are definitely people that are like that, where they buy their DVDs or they buy their box sets, but then they'll pay digitally for like PSN games or Xbox Live games or Steam games. And I get it. Like, there's a lot of like permutations of this that all work in various different ways. But to take away one and just have the other, or vice versa, I don't think is really necessarily the right way to go about this. Let's read a few more. Subscription services are great if you keep paying, which is what they want. Services supply a constant revenue stream, but if the quality of content falls off, then most people will cancel. Then prices go up. There is a plus to having physical media, and I can understand that too. Again, like there's a lot of ebbs and flows with subscription services. Like look what happened to Disney Plus. Like not that long ago, there was a lot of people that dropped Disney Plus, and it really had nothing to do with the service itself. I think a lot of people were upset about some of the shows that were on there, the quality of the content in general. They were upset at Disney for other things outside of the content, which again, you can't stop people for reacting, a certain way, here or there based on their emotions. But as far as the service itself, I think Disney Plus as a service is great. But even then, the numbers for that service were fluctuating up and down. And if anything, I want to say like a couple months ago, people were complaining about how it went down after a lot of the Star Wars shows came out, after Willow, after, trying to think, I think there was also a couple other pieces of Disney media that went out, like specifically Disney shows or Disney movies, a bunch of different things. You would have to go look it up to be specific. But the point is, it's always constantly going up and down. You could say the same thing about Netflix. And it's only recently, because Netflix was like losing money for years, as a digital service. And then only more recently are they kind of starting to go up on the upswing, which is good for them, but again, ebbs and flows. So let's see if we can find one more good one in here. There's nothing wrong with not having a physical disc, but making previously buy-to-play games require a monthly sub price like WoW is an entirely different subject. COVID made tech companies insanely delusional about the actual worth of their services. I wonder how long it will take for these companies to get comfortable with the fact that 300 to 400% growth a year is not sustainable under normal circumstances, no matter how much they want to cry about it, which we do have to acknowledge. During the pandemic, there was a huge uptick and a huge bump for a lot of services like this because people were home. People were, they couldn't go outside. They wanted to do something. So they got Disney Plus, they got Netflix, they got Hulu, they got HBO Max. The list goes on. So that was a huge surge in subscriptions. And then eventually, when everybody started going outside and there was no shows or movies that people wanted to watch on them, they started canceling them. And again, ebbs and flows. It goes up and down. So to tie this all back to games, I feel like as long as we have multiple options for a lot of this stuff, I feel like we'll be okay. To take away one or the other, like I said before, is not the way to go about this. But anyway, let me know some of your thoughts about this down below in the comment section. Do you agree or disagree with me on this? Do you feel like, digital games and subscriptions are going to be, much more of a bigger thing in the next couple of years? Do you feel like people are really going to move away from physical media? Or do you feel like people are never going to give up physical media? They're always going to want to own their games physically and tangibly in some fashion. Tell me about that down below in the comment section. So, shorter episode of the podcast today, again, because I'm a little under the weather, but also there's other stuff happening very soon. I feel like we're going to have much more to talk about on the next episode after the Xbox Developer Direct. And I'm pretty sure from now till then, there'll be some other crazy nonsense that happens, because just when you think things are quiet, all of a sudden some nonsense happens. And it's like, come on now, man. Like, can't the internet or the gaming industry or the gaming media get it together? Let's try not to have a crazy week. You know what I'm saying? Let's have a good weekend, a chill one for once. Either way, make sure you guys leave a like on this episode of the podcast, on this video. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you haven't already done so. And don't forget, make sure you follow me on TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, on Instagram. Don't forget, you could also check out the Discord and the Patreon that I have linked in the description box down below. There's a whole bunch of great stuff for you guys to engage with, more content to enjoy, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I have coming very, very soon. So for me, make sure you guys, again, have a good weekend. And yeah, I will talk to all of you again very soon. This channel is sponsored by Flynn's Arcade and More, located in Margate, Florida. Flynn's is one of the premier spots for gaming fans in South Florida. They have a variety of arcade games on cabinet for you to play throughout the week, including all of your beloved classics. You could also play a ton of new and current console games too, on PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo consoles. Grab a snack or drink and enjoy the best gaming experience you'll find. Visit during one of their many big events to connect with the gaming community in South Florida. Want to test your skills in competitive fighting games? Join any of the weekly tournaments that happen at Flynn's for a chance for some cool prizes. And if you're into tabletop gaming or model kit building, there's a bunch of events there for you too. Swing by Flynn's Arcade and More, located in Margate Boulevard in Margate, Florida. You won't find a better spot than Flynn's.